Cote d'Ivoire is rushing against time to finalize preparations ahead of Africa's football showpiece, the Africa Cup of Nations. The West African nation is set to host a tournament for the second time in 40 years and is hoping to put up a spectacular show for 24 teams, hundreds of footballers, and thousands of football fans from January the 13th to February the 11th, 2024. Here's CGTN's Simon Ngunia with more.
The West African nation of Cote d'Ivoire has been undergoing criticism about its insufficient facilities to host a 24-nation Africa Cup of Nations, mainly due to it being their first time hosting the tournament since they last did in 1984. But the two times African champions have showcased 4 new stadiums and renovated 2 more in major cities such as Abidjan and Yamoussoukro.
Organiser une CAN pour nous, c'était l'occasion de doter le pays d'infrastructures sportives.
I have to remind you that for years, no infrastructure had been built. At the time, we had the rotating independence celebrations, and that was when we provided the towns with sports infrastructure. So Cote d'Ivoire didn't have even any infrastructure worth of the name. The organization of this Cup of Nations will give us 4 new stadiums and 2 renovated stadiums in one go.
Et de 2 stades réhabilités.
The world's leading cocoa producer has not only improved its sports facilities but also its medical facilities and road network in anticipation of hosting the 34th edition of the competition.
L'État de Côte d'Ivoire a investi.
The state of Cote d'Ivoire has invested more than $1 billion in all types of infrastructure, be it sports, roads, hospitals or others.
Hospitalière.
Cote d'Ivoire is hoping to take lessons from the 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa, where the infrastructure fell into disrepair.
We hope that after the Cup of Nations, all the sporting and non-sporting infrastructure that will have been put in place and built can be used for the development and growth of the country.
Les infrastructures, qu'elles soient sportives ou non sportives.
This is the problem of infrastructure in Africa. We saw in Gabon after the final in 2012, the stadium became almost like a forest. We need follow-up. The state has made efforts, the president of the republic has made efforts, but today the ball is in the sportsman's court. We have to take care of it.
The clock is ticking as the continent's biggest football carnival approaches. The fans' drums, trumpets and jerseys are ready as they all await the competition's kickoff. January 13th, 2024 cannot come any sooner. Simon Ngunia, CGTN.
All right, to get more insight into the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations, I am joined from Nairobi, David Kwalimwa, who is an online editor of Nation Media Group, and Darren Kayune, African football expert and sports analyst from Uganda. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us here on Sports Scene. Let's start with you, Darren. From that report, we have seen Cote d'Ivoire has built not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 new stadiums from scratch and renovated 2 others. Roads that connect the cities have been developed and hospitals are built, upgraded, airports refurbished for this tournament alone. Now, what's the estimated cost? That's the big question. And most importantly, how will they recoup the investment?
First of all, looking at the amount of money that Ivory Coast has been able to spend over the last few years to just get this tournament in place, it's being reported almost $1 billion has been spent to just see the stadiums in place, the other facilities like hospitals, among other institutions that have been put in place to have the country host 24 teams across 5 different cities. And I've got to add that this is of significant impact to many countries that particularly try to run out and stretch their hands to host these particular tournaments. One key thing you've got to note is there is usually fundamental change in the infrastructure of a particular country, especially on the African continent, that countries fundamentally change by just hosting one major tournament because the demands by the global sporting organizations like FIFA or CAF are quite high, And to reach that standard, you find that several countries end up polishing up their own structures, inevitably improving. As you could see, Qatar has just been tremendously changed just after the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And I've also got to add, for Ivory Coast, there is a bit of a huge leap in terms of infrastructure, considering majority and a number of people, about 1 million, got displaced because of the war that was ongoing between 2002 and 2011.
All right, Darren, thanks for that. Let's see if we can bring David into this chat as well. David, thank you for standing by. David, from our conversation, you can hear that the African Cup of Nations is heading back to Cote d'Ivoire for the second time and the first time since 1984. My question to you, it has been a long time coming. How did the politics of hosting rights delay this tournament ever since they won the hosting rights way back in 2014?
Of course, Ivory Coast, or Cote d'Ivoire, if you may, was initially awarded the hosting rights for the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations by the Confederation of African Football, who are the tournament organizers of this showpiece, which is dubbed the African Football World Cup. But then in between, the Confederation of African Football did switch to hand Cameroon the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations and move Cote d'Ivoire to host the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations. Now, Cote d'Ivoire, authorities in Cote d'Ivoire were not so happy with that decision. And the tiff between the tournament organizers and the West African country went all the way to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to try and mediate through this dispute. But then a softer ground, or a middle ground, was found between the two parties, in this case CAF and Cote d'Ivoire, leading to a statement by the Cote d'Ivoire government and specifically the Minister of Sport saying, well, we are okay with hosting the 2023 edition of this tournament and leave our neighbor and brother Cameroon to handle the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations. Of course, a lot of water has passed under the bridge since, and Cameroon did host the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations. And here we are, waiting for Cote d'Ivoire to see what Abidjan has to offer the world. Of course, Abidjan, known as the little Paris of Africa, hosting the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations just in a few weeks' time.